Together we can change the world. Lay the puzzle pieces out, find out what it's all about. Together we can change the world. Can't do it by myself, so I'm asking for your help. Together we can change the world. Tell us where it's been trodden, roll your sleeves up, let's get started. Together we can change the world. Together we can change the world. With our hands and with our hearts, we can dare to make a start. Together we can change the world. What if we spoke with one voice, knowing that we have a choice? Together we can change the world. Can't do it by myself, so I'm asking for your help. Together we can change the world. Someone's where it's been trying, roll your sleeves up, let's get started. Together we can change the world. Together we can change the world.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our whole school assembly. That's right, it's 20 past 11 again, and today it's Tuesday, the 5th of May 2020. It's great to be back and lovely to see who's watching this morning. If you're there, do make sure you say hello in the comments box. It's always nice to know who's watching. The Scott family are here and they say hello to everyone. Thank you, Scott family, for joining us this morning. I hope you're having a great morning in virtual school. It's wonderful to see all the work that everyone's been doing across the school. Lots of power maths happening this morning, and some people taking on Mrs. Johnson's special grammar challenge. If you've had a go at Mrs. Johnson's grammar challenge this morning, do let us know. Hello from Isaac and Miss Brown. Isaac says, good song choice. Thank you very much, Isaac. It's always a nice song to start assembly with. Hi from the Bakers who are tuning in this morning. Hello, Baker family. Thank you very much for joining us live on Facebook and YouTube this morning. Hello from Imogen, who's watching. Always great to see you watching, Imogen, and thank you for joining us. Hello from Harlan and from Hugo, who are watching this morning. Welcome back to Whole School Assembly from Virtual School. And hello from Lily. Thank you very much, Lily, for tuning in today. Always great to see who's watching. Please do keep your comments through as we welcome our mystery guest this morning. Hello, Mr. Spracklen from Ursula and Orson, who are joining us this morning. Thank you, Ursula and Orson. Great to see you. Now, we've got a very special mystery guest this morning. I'm going to say a big hello to them. I'm going to say a big hello to Steve. Good morning, Steve.
Good morning, Mr. Spracklen. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
I'm very good, thank you. Enjoying my nice seat in my living room in Fordington.
Fantastic. Now, some of the children may recognise you because you've been into school before, haven't you, Steve? Many times.
Yes, but I used to have much shorter hair then because I haven't been able to get it cut for a good 2 months. So, yes,
had a
bit of a change.
Yeah. So, Steve, would you like to tell everyone who you are and what job you do?
Yep, my job title is Senior Archaeologist, as I think I've told you before. So I work for Dorset Council, doing things to do with archaeology, which is studying the past, the human past, through through things that people have left behind and so forth, and looking after places. But what I've also done in my own time is used old pictures to produce books. So that people can compare all the new pictures of places to see how they've changed, which is what I'd like to speak to you about today, please.
Oh, that sounds absolutely brilliant. Thank you very much, Steve. We'd love to see that. And I think you've entitled your assembly today, Dorchester, Old and New. And I've got some slides up on the screen here.
Excellent. Yeah, and I'm just going to hold this up to the screen. I hope you can see them if I put them nice and close. There we go. And you see those. Those are the sort of things that you don't see much today, but when I was a kid, everyone sent them on their holidays, their postcards. And the idea was that you could have a nice picture of a place where you were, and you could send something off to your relatives or friends or whatever, and on the back send their address. That's an empty one, and a message, and that's the way they were sent. So there are lots of historical information, and they started coming in about 1900, when people got good at photography and could take lots of pictures quite easily. And when you were actually allowed to send these things, before that you had to send them in letters, but then the idea came in of, why not we just have these little bits of card that can go in the post and we can send messages to each other. And they were almost like the text messages of today. You could quickly write a little message to your mates, and the post was very quick in those days. So you could say, do you want to come around for tea tomorrow? Send it to your friend somewhere else in the town, and you might get a response saying, yeah, I'll be there, all within about 24 hours. So can we perhaps have a look at the first one, please, Mr Spracklen? Hello?
Yeah, definitely.
Ooh. There we go. You see that's the back of one of these ones that's been filled in, a bit like this one that I'm holding up. And it tells us all sorts of information. It tells us who they were sending it to. I'm pointing. That's a silly thing to do because you can't see where I'm pointing. If you look on the right-hand side, there's the address of the person somewhere near Sherborne it was being sent to. And if you look on the top right-hand corner, there's a stamp, like we still use today, but there's also a postmark over it, which tells you the date. And that's March 1810. So that was March 18th, 1910 that message was sent. And you might want to read later of the message on the other side. It's just a fairly ordinary thing, really. It's someone wishing a friend a happy birthday and saying they might come and visit them, and then showing off about all the nice places they've been to. And the next one, please. But this is a nice way I've compared the two of these. I hope you can see that, because you can go back and find the location where a picture was taken and take a photograph like I did. In this case, I took the picture about 10 years ago, so my picture's a bit out of date, but you can get a good idea of how things have changed. The picture on the upper top left was taken about 1900, looking along High West Street in Dorchester. And I took my picture a few years ago now, but you can see all sorts of differences. You can see that some of the buildings are still the same. Like on the left, Judge Jeffrey's restaurant is in both pictures. But look at what the people are doing on the old picture. They're running down the street. Now, you wouldn't do that now because you get knocked over. And in fact, when I wanted to get a picture that didn't have too many cars in, I had to go on a Sunday morning to take that picture. But you can generally get the same idea. And it also shows how good photography was, because some of the early photographs, people had to sit really still for a long time before a picture could be taken. But that one taken about 1900 is quite similar to a modern picture. It's a snapshot. It just shows a moment. You look at closely and you'll see that people are clearly moving. They're running up and down, and yet they've still managed to get a really good photo. And the next one, please. And I like this picture because it tells you all sorts of things about how photographers worked. First of all, can you see there's someone's, well, let me tell you where it is. It's St Peter's Church in Dorchester, quite close by where that other picture was taken. And the building on the left is Dorset County Museum. But yeah, can you see there's a person standing there in the road? You might be able to make out that it's an old-fashioned uniform, but that's a policeman. And I think that's how some of these photographers worked. They had to have the help of the local police. So what they've done is they've got some people to pose, to stand with their little stalls just in front of St Peter's Church, and they've got the help of the police to keep everyone else out of the way and keep the traffic back. And sometimes when you see some of these pictures close up, you see that the policeman is really close in, smiling away because he's really chuffed and enjoying himself. But they needed to sort of do a bit of teamwork on that.
It's a moment of fame for the policeman, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And these were photographs like that were quite an event, and you knew that then the postcard would be published soon afterwards, and you could send a postcard with yourself in it. So yeah, a good bit of sales work as well by the photographer. But if you go and stand at this spot and try and look back, find it again, you can't go much further back than the photographer was, because there's other buildings away in in South Street. So when I went along with my camera, and I'll show you in a minute, I couldn't even get this wider view along. Look at that. That's as much as I could get. Look at, compare the two. So in a way, the photographer took this about 1910, so 110 years ago, had a better camera than me because he maybe had to set it up for longer, but he could get much more of the view. He could get the whole church for a start into that picture.
And I wonder if anyone else can notice anything different between this picture and this picture. Is there any additions, perhaps, from this picture to this picture? I can spot one thing that's...
Yeah, I get a couple. So I'll hang on and see who turns up with things.
Interesting, the statues in both.
Yeah, the statue of William Barnes, the Dorset dialect poet.
While we do that, I've got a couple of questions here.
Okay.
Imogen's asking, how long have you been an archaeologist?
Oh gosh, I went to university and studied archaeology at Leicester in the early 1980s, so nearly 40 years, sort of.
Fantastic.
Probably longer than most of your teachers have been alive.
Imogen says there's a sign on the side, so that's right. In the first picture, there isn't the sign that says St Mary's Church.
That's right. Yeah, the red one. Yeah.
Is there anything else that we notice that's different? I wonder. There's lines in the road, says the Hoskins. That's in the second. That's in the second.
That's true.
And there's no road markings in the first one. And there's traffic lights.
Yeah.
That was the first thing that I noticed, the traffic lights. There's no need for traffic lights in 1910 when the first one was taken.
No.
Some good spots there, Prince of Wales. Thank you.
Shall we move on to the next one where you can actually compare two?
Brilliant.
There we go. Thanks for that. Now, lots to talk about this one. You might recognise it's in the Borough Gardens in Dorchester, so sort of between your school and the town centre. And the caption on at the top says the Hansford Clock, and that was put up in 1905. And I think this postcard was made and sent out very soon afterwards. But this tells us something about how people worked, because they got a new technology, and that was colour. But they didn't always use it properly. They were too busy showing off that they could colour pictures in, because you think old pictures are always in black and white from 100 years ago or so, but actually what they could do is they could take a picture and then they could sort of add colour afterwards. And I think I see some of them, it's almost like they did it with crayon. And then but the person who was doing the colouring in afterwards might not have been the photographer, or it might have been the photographer, but they forgot what they saw, or they couldn't quite be bothered. So that clock, as you see it in the modern picture on the right, I'm pretty sure has always had that colour scheme on it. It's always had the reds and the greens and the golds, yellows and whatever on it. But when they did the one on the right, on the left rather, the old one, either they forgot or they couldn't be bothered. So they did it mostly in green and just put a few little bits in other colours. But also when that old picture was taken, say about 1905, so just over 110 years ago, Borough Gardens had only been open for 15 years and only been laid out about 1890. So the trees in the background in the old picture are much smaller because they'd not had very long to grow. And as you see in the modern picture, in my picture on the right, you can hardly see the houses. They're just sort of peeking through the trees because the trees have had a good 100 years to grow.
A couple of people pointing out the trees in this picture, thinking about the time and the colour and the size of the trees in that space. Comments about the sky as well.
Yeah.
Imogen says the clock is magnificent.
Nice one, Imogen.
We had a question about the old photo, the previous photo as well. There's a good question. I'll just put that back up a second. This one. Jessica was wondering if the Corn Exchange would have been next to it at the time of the old photograph.
Yes, because the Corn Exchange was built in the 1800s, so it was already there. It's just not in this picture.
Fantastic. I'll go back to that one. And when was this clock installed? Do we know?
1905, and it was. You might be able to see in close up in my picture, especially. You can just see the outline of a head, a face. That's the man Charles Hansford who paid for it. And if you go there today, you can still see that head, that silhouette
So
of
that
Charles
was
Hansford.
after.
Sorry.
It's very similar to the Jubilee clock in Weymouth, isn't it? Which is older.
Yeah, very similar. You can't help looking at the two and thinking that people from Dorchester went and saw the Jubilee one and thought, we'll have one of them. Yeah. I think that there's actually a company that was making them quite standard. And in fact, someone showed me a picture of one of these in Portugal, which is very similar to this one. I think it's Portugal. And so there was obviously such a good design and people liked them so much, they may well have been sending them all over the world.
And would the Borough Gardens have been open to everyone at that time when it was first opened? Do we know that? Or
yeah, I mean it was a thing that was happening in Victorian times, the late 1800s. Towns were getting bigger and people were spending a lot of time working, and it was much more difficult to get to the countryside to go for a walk and get fresh air. So people who were in charge thought, well, we need to do something about this to make sure that more people can at least get some exercise and enjoy a bit of greenery, see a bit of nature. So there was it became very much a fashion to start start building parks within the expanding towns and cities. So Borough Gardens in Dorchester was just one example. They were springing up all over the place.
Oh, fantastic! Should we go on? We'll go on to the next one.
Yeah.
This is also Borough Gardens, isn't it?
Yep, exactly. I think from what's in the picture, things like the bandstand in the middle, which was also put up about 1905, and other details and so forth, that this and the next picture were both taken sometime between about 1905 and 1910 from a very similar angle. So two different photographers had the same idea, that was a good spot to get a good view of the Borough Gardens, and they even had the idea of getting someone to pose in the picture in the same sort of way. In both of them, there is a lady in full Edwardian gear, that was the Edwardian time, strolling along, supposedly just happening to be there, but I very much think that the photographer got someone to do it deliberately. You see the way that people are sort of nicely spaced out, whereas in my case, I just went along, about 10 years ago now, so even that's probably changed, and just found roughly the same spot and took a picture with the bandstand, but also with much more trees. So in those two old pictures, you can see the houses in the streets beyond just poking out on the tops, whereas in mine you can't, because the trees have grown a lot more. And I think you could probably go along now and compare that picture of mine, which, I think that was 10 years ago, with what you see today. And you'll probably see some changes, certainly in the growth of the trees.
A lot more benches now.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Well, yes, and I guess that was part of what they initially thought, that parks were about exercise and walking more, like we're doing now with coronavirus. You're meant to be out walking. Whereas I think as time went on in the past, people thought, well, actually, it's nice to just sit and enjoy. And some people can't walk very far, so we'll put more benches in.
Now where's this?
Now I'm going to check my notes on this, so I'm just going to lean over if anyone can see me. This is in South Street in Dorchester, and the building on the left is still there. The one on the right isn't. The building on the left is quite famous, called Napper's Mite. It's one of the lovely old historic buildings in Dorchester, and it was built in 1615 by a chap called Sir Robert Napper, who left his money behind so it can be built in his will, I think. And it was intended as an almshouse where poor people who were unable to look after themselves, older people, could live a nice, comfortable life and grow some vegetables for their food and things in the back. So that's still there. And you look at, but if you could perhaps show my picture, you can see there's that same Napper's Mite with a few more bits of paraphernalia knocking around it. But look to the right of it in that picture, and you'll see one or two very different buildings. That's the Hardy Arcade in my picture, and Gould's shop I think the Ghoul Shop was built in the 1980s and the Hardy Arcade in the late 1960s, so about 50 years ago. The building that was in the old picture on the right is the Dorchester Grammar School, which was, I'm going to just sneak over and check my dates, was built in 1879 and then was demolished in the 1960s when the Hardy Arcade was being built. And that's quite typical of quite a lot of Dorchester. It's got a lot of old historic buildings that survive and give the place a real character, make it a really nice, interesting place to look around. But also in some cases, people have thought, oh, the buildings, well, we don't need this anymore. We really need something a bit more modern. So 50 years ago, what they thought was modern was the Hardy Arcade with lots of shops in it where people can buy all the things they need.
I wonder if any of the children can spot any other similarities between this photo and this photo. Are there any other part of buildings apart from the Napper's Mite? Is there another building that's the same in this and this shot?
I think I know what you mean.
See if you can see anything. Maybe comment on there. It's very interesting how some buildings survive and some don't, even though they're next door to each other.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And at least Dorchester's lucky than a lot of other places where which were bombed heavily in the Second World War, where they didn't really have much choice. The buildings were destroyed. Dorchester lost very little, I think, during the war.
While we see if anyone's got any answers to that question, I'm just going to go back to the clock because our Deputy Mayor of Dorchester, David Taylor's watching.
Oh, hi.
Says that we've just restored the clock and found it had 61 minutes on its face.
Thank you, David. I will be using that as if I've known it all along next time I do a presentation on this sort of thing.
Well, there's a little unknown fact for us.
Absolutely. Yeah. You do pick up some good stuff when you do these sort of talks. All sorts of people come up with all sorts of great stuff.
I'm going back to this picture and this picture. Rose has spotted that there's a church.
That's it. Yeah.
People to the church. Some people have seen other things. Jacob spotted there's a flag in the second picture. Not in the first picture. There's a few flags there. I wonder if anyone can name the flags that they can see. There's a lot of one particular flag here. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 flags that are yellow with a white cross on. I wonder if anyone knows what that is. And there's another flag up here as well that you might be able to spot on there as well. So see if any of you can spot what that is. A few people have spotted the church. The church, you can certainly see the church in both, can't you?
Yeah. And I don't think that was very old when the old picture was taken. It's probably only, I don't know, 30, 40 years old at the time.
Oh, wow. That's fantastic. We got a few people now seeing the Dorset flag. They spotted the Dorset flag. Look in that picture. There's quite a lot of Dorset flags there, isn't there? I wonder whether there was a special event going on when you took that photo.
There must have been. To be honest, it's such a long time ago. It's about 10 years. I've forgotten. So again, you could go and have a look at that picture today and compare that with what's there today. And I think you'll see a few other changes as well.
Oh, there's an interesting comment here saying that the paving that was completed a few years ago in South Street was designed to highlight the historic buildings by using higher quality materials. The higher quality material is outside Napper's Mite and outside the church.
Morning, Emma.
Yeah,
I know Emma. Morning, Emma.
Lots of people spotting the Dorset flag. Joel says the Dorset flag too. Lots of people spotting that. Thank you very much. Should we move on? Let's have a look what we've got next. Where's this to, I wonder? It's quite hard to see with all the trees here.
Yeah, absolutely. That could almost be one for people to guess, isn't it? I mean, that is a view that has really changed because those trees have gone. Should we ask if anyone knows where that is?
Yeah, that would be really good.
We'll just give you a moment. I will just say while we're waiting that lots of the roads in Dorchester had trees planted outside them. Some of them around about 200 years ago, some less. There used to be a story that a lot of them were put by French prisoners during the wars against Napoleon. That may not be true in all cases, but a lot of the roads that go out of the town of Dorchester, you can still see they've got trees along them. But this one has largely lost its trees because I think it was being widened. This picture, I think, was taken about 1895. So it's one of the very earliest ones we've got in this presentation. and about 5 years later, the road was being widened, I think, and that was probably why those trees were cut down.
So before we see people's guesses for where this is, David Taylor's made a reference to the Dorset flag and said the white cross on the flag is our patron saint, Saint
Wita.
Wita, I think,
Wita.
Saint Wita. And I watched a video, Saint Wita, and we watched a video last week where David was talking about Saint Wita.
Yeah. From which
we've got a few guesses here where this is. Joel says, is it the Keep? The Wilsons say it's the Keep near the top of the town. Hazel, the Hoskins say that is the Keep. A few people saying the Keep, I think.
Oh yeah.
Rosa says, or the Dovels say the Keep, but Rosa always calls it the Castle.
Yeah, well done, Rosa. Yeah, everyone's right.
That's all from Jacob. That's right. A bit different looking now, though, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Let's have a look. Yep, there's still same sort of angle. There's Bridport Road without the trees, and a lot more buildings along it as the town has grown up. And yeah, there's the Keep, which is now it's a military museum, but it was the gatehouse to the military barracks, built in the 1870s. And the person who said it looked like a castle is absolutely spot on right, because it was obviously designed to look like the entrance to a castle, to make it look like a nice military place.
So do we know anything about the trees while they would have been taken down? Because they've all gone from there, haven't they?
Yeah, I think it's to do with road widening. I think if you compare the two and you look where the pavement is up to the left-hand side of the Keep, you'll see that it is wider. You see what I mean? So I'm pretty sure that it was just road widening. But I may be wrong.
We've got some exceptions. There's areas like Queen's Avenue still got lots of trees down, hasn't it?
Yeah, and Weymouth Avenue out from Dorchester has got them. Or
yeah,
as you go out from my end, from Fordington, you go out past Overgrazed Bridge. You know, there are still some nice avenues of trees out of the town that way.
Lexi says my granny lives near there, and this is a museum and the Keep from Lexi. And the Hoskins say Prince Charles is a big supporter of trees and has put a new row in our field along the Bridport Road entry to the town. So more tree planting happening now. So it'd be interesting to see if we could compare a photo from now until maybe 100 years time, what those trees might look like.
Yeah.
That would be interesting, wouldn't it? Sort of future going forward in time.
And I'd be really chuffed to be around to do that.
That's fantastic. Interesting how places change.
Yeah.
Oh, what have we got next?
This is Fordington. Now, this is a postcard that was sent about 1940, but I'm pretty sure that's a much older picture. I think that was taken about 1900. And if you look on the left-hand side near the top, you will see St. George's Church in Fordington, which is, well, I could almost see it out my living room window if I bent round a little bit from where I'm sitting. But that's the church that you'll see as you come into Dorchester from the east side. So if you're coming in from Stinchwood roundabout, if you've been coming from somewhere like Blandford or Poole, or if you were going out that way, that's the church up on the hill. And you'll see a lot of the houses in Fordington. Now, look in the modern picture, you can. I had to go at a slightly different spot because that old picture was taken on someone's private land, but you can sort of get the same idea. There's now been a row of houses built along London Road, which blocks the view of Fordington in my modern picture, so you can just see the church showing up above it. And what you also see in the old picture is a lot of cows grazing on what were the water meadows, the areas that were deliberately flooded at various times to make grass grow earlier and all sorts of things like that. And they had hay on there. And I'm pretty sure that picture would have been taken around about August, September, because what they would do was they would have what was called the aftermath, where after they'd harvested the grass, the hay crop, they let cows go onto the land to eat all what was left behind. When they cut the grass off, there lots of bits of stubble behind and so forth. So the cows went on there and had a good old feast of everything that was left behind. And can anyone see a doggy in one of my pictures? In my picture there, not in the old one, but in mine. Just as I was taking that picture, someone threw a stick into the river for their dog, and he's just swimming by, carrying it out. You just see his head bobbing out of the water with his stick in his mouth. Still hear me?
I can hear you. What have we got here? What have we got here?
Well, this is a spot that you can just see hasn't really changed much at all. I'm just trying to work out when the picture was taken. I think that was taken about 1905, so say 115 years ago. And when I was doing my book, I found that old picture, and I had lots of others. Went round, I got them, bought all these postcards up fairly cheaply. Went around finding the spots, and that was the last one it took me to find. It took me ages to work out where it was. And actually, when you find the spot, it's very obvious where it is. If you can go on a walk there from Dorchester without going too far at the moment. You go out over Blue Bridge and a little bit further on towards Froome Whitfield, and I think you're pretty sure that that bridge is the same one where the lady, again, that's what photographers like to do then, and they often still do, to make a picture more interesting. They will get someone to pose in the picture to add a bit more interest, and I guess to give people a good idea of the size of things. And I think it's got a bit more overgrown, but it's the same old spot. Yeah. Now the last ones, I'm just going to take you outside Dorset to give you good ideas of other things you can pick up. These are a pair of postcards taken near Swanage, or between Swanage and Studland, at Old Harry Rocks, which some of you might have visited. And I think these postcards were taken not that far apart. I think the first one so that's the one up on the top left, was taken about 1920, and the one on the bottom right, maybe about 1930. It might be a bit longer than that. But if you look close up, you can see how the chalk cliffs there that stick out towards into the sea there have been eroding away. Bits have been lost. So if you look at the bit that's in the centre of the top left-hand one, you can see two little arches that have been eroding away. And when you look on the one bottom right, they're bigger. So only about 10 years or so, the chalk has been crumbling away, and those arches have got bigger. And in a moment, when we go to my picture, I couldn't get to the same spot that was taken because it is now in midair. It's not only those bits that are eroding, the actual coast, main bit of the coastline is as well. So that bit of coast that you see in there, you see, that you saw on the top left of the other one, has pretty well gone. So I'm looking at a different angle, and a bit difficult to see, but in my picture, just to the right of centre, you can see those two arches. One of them, though, because I'm at a slightly different angle, you can't see very clearly, but they both got a lot bigger. So it gives you a good idea of how much erosion happens over 100 years or so. And also in my picture, I managed to get Bournemouth in, because when you go looking that way, you're looking northeast along the coast. So the town that you can just see in the background along the coast with some buildings, the block of flats and so forth, is Bournemouth.
Fantastic. Lots and lots of people really enjoying the assembly. Sophie says that this is so cool.
All good stuff. Thank you.
Hopkins says, wow, that is so cool as well. It's been really lovely having you join us this morning, Steve. We've really appreciated you giving up your time and sharing these fantastic images with us. And it'd be great. What would be fab is if anyone at home's got some images, maybe they've been shared previously with you, or maybe you found some on the internet of maybe where you live, or maybe an area that is special to you from the past and what it's like now. We'd love to see those. It'd be great if you could send those in. If you've got any then and now shots, as I call them, it's always nice to kind of compare. I know we've done some projects across school before where we've gone and visited different locations. I know some children would have gone with Mr McBean to Abbotsbury and seen some of the old railway lines and seen how those have changed over the years. It'd be great for people to share those pictures with us. That'd be wonderful.
Okay.
So Steve, we'll say a big thank you.
Okay. Have you got the last one, by the way? Was another one?
Yeah. Oh, there's another one. Fantastic to see.
Okay.
Oh yeah.
Leave it. It's all right.
Sorry, I thought that was one.
That's all right.
Okay.
I thought you were get rid of me now.
No, definitely not. Let's have a look.
This is Cernabus, the village that's famous for the Cernabus giant, up in the middle of Dorset, about 7 miles north of Dorchester. The old picture was taken about 1905, and I like to show this to people and give them a little sort of quiz of spot the difference. Now, there's some obvious differences, like the way that the road has been tarmacked since then, and that there are cars in it. But there are some little minor details like the flagpost on the top of the church. But I think there are three big differences in those two pictures. Should we, Mr. Spracklen, ask people if they can come up, they can see what those are?
How many differences can you spot? I can spot some really interesting ones, actually.
Yeah.
Let's see if we can get some comments in the comments box there. Things that are the same and things that are different. It'd be good to look for those differences. Can you spot the difference? And when was that picture on the left taken? Do we know?
I think about 1905. So it's a good 100 years old.
Excellent. A few people spotting some really big ones. There's some Sophie saying the car.
Yep.
Imogen saying the car. Can we spot any other differences?
What about in the buildings? Look at the buildings. See if you can see differences there.
The buildings on the left side are different, says the Hoskin. Flag on the top of the church tower.
Yep.
A house has vanished. That's why.
Yep, well done.
That's
well done. You've got that one. Yes.
So this
on the left,
one here.
The one on the left-hand side, I was told there was a fire in about 1970s, 1975, I think, that destroyed that one, so it was never fully rebuilt. So that's obvious, but there's another house that's gone, and that's more to the right, just in front of the church. And that is now churchyard. So I think people knocked that down just because they wanted to make the churchyard bigger, so they could bury more people in the churchyard. But that's two of them. I shall give you a clue. There's another one which is really obvious when you're told it, but you might not notice it. I'll give you a clue. I wonder if we've got much time for you to work this out.
I spotted that.
You got it. Yeah. I think I'll tell you whenever I tell a guess. I think I'll tell you why. Sorry.
Okay, let's see if we've got any more. Let's see if we've got any more comments. People saying the size and the colour of the flag house, the clock. There was a house and now there's not. Building on the LHS is lower. A building on the right has been demolished. A house has vanished. The clock.
Yeah, they got the clock.
So what's going on with that clock then? Because the clock on the right is centred, whereas the clock on the left is not centred.
I can only think. Well, other people guessed it as well. That maybe because of the way the buildings were in 1905, it was difficult for some people to see the clock if it was in the middle, so they put it to one side. It might have just been one person who moaned a lot. I can't see the clock out from my house. So I think they put it over to the left so that people maybe in the square where the pictures are taken from or just back from there could work out what time it was, because watches were expensive, and now we look at church clocks on churches and think, oh, they're nice, aren't they? Fun, how sweet. Well, actually, for some people, that was the main way they had of telling what time it was. So they were very important.
Fantastic. Steve, thank you very much again. It's been a brilliant assembly. We've really enjoyed having you with us. Appreciate you giving the time to us today, and we'll have to have you back sometime soon.
Yeah, maybe.
Thank you very much.
Cheers.
Live at 4 o'clock for Today at POW. We will see you then. Take care.